My name is Beth, and I've been married to Steve for 25 years. We've had our ups and downs, but we built a life together. I thought I knew him, knew everything about him. After all, we've been through enough: mortgages, family issues, the usual. But nothing could have prepared me for what happened on my 50th birthday. I was never one to make a fuss about birthdays. I suppose, when you hit a milestone like 50, you're expected to throw a big party, but I didn't care much for that. It was just another year, after all. But Steve, well, he thought this one would be different. He said he had a surprise planned, and although I didn't ask for anything extravagant, I was curious. The morning of my birthday, I woke up to a quiet house. Steve was already up, as usual. He'd been working long hours lately, and I knew he was under pressure. His boss, Mr. Richardson, was a tough man, a successful businessman who had always been a bit of a mystery to me. Steve had been working for him for nearly 10 years, and from what I could tell, Mr. Richardson was the kind of man who didn't give much away. He wasn't the warm, approachable type. But he had a reputation for being generous with his employees, if you played your cards right. I made my way down to the kitchen, still half asleep, when I found Steve sipping his coffee at the table. He had a slight smile on his face, the kind of smile I hadn't seen in a while. His eyes twinkled with something almost mischievous, but it wasn't the kind of excitement I expected for a special birthday. He seemed distant, distracted, but in a good way. He was acting as if there was something important he was waiting for, and that something was about to happen. "Good morning, birthday girl," Steve said, his voice warm but almost forced. "Good morning," I replied, smiling back. "So, any clues about my surprise?" He grinned, shaking his head. "Not yet. You'll have to wait and see." I let it go. We ate breakfast together, and I could tell he was eager for me to finish. As soon as I put my dishes away, he stood up and told me he had to make a quick call for work. He left the room, and I stood there, slightly annoyed but also intrigued. Whatever it was, it had to be big. It wasn't long before I heard a car pull into the driveway. I glanced out the window and saw Mr. Richardson's sleek black sedan. I raised an eyebrow. Why was he here? I knew Steve had mentioned they'd be working late on a project, but I didn't expect Mr. Richardson to show up at our house on my birthday. I stood frozen in place for a moment before I heard the doorbell ring. Steve had already disappeared into the living room, leaving me standing by the window with more questions than answers. I opened the door, and there he was, Mr. Richardson, as imposing as ever, standing at the threshold. "Beth," he greeted me, his voice deep and smooth. "Happy birthday." "Thank you," I replied, not sure how to feel. "What brings you here, Mr. Richardson?" He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Just a little something for you." I blinked in confusion. Was this some sort of business tactic? I had never expected any kind of gift from him, especially not on my birthday. He stepped aside, and I saw the object he was holding, a shiny, new set of keys, glinting in the sunlight. "Steve didn't tell you?" Mr. Richardson asked with a raised brow. Tell me what?" I stammered, still unsure about the situation. Without another word, he handed me the keys. "This is for you," he said, almost casually. "A little birthday present. Consider it a token of appreciation for all the hard work Steve's put in over the years." My mouth went dry. I glanced over at Steve, who was now standing behind me in the doorway. His face was unreadable, his eyes avoiding mine. What is this?" I asked, still holding the keys in my hand, not sure whether to laugh or cry. "A car," Mr. Richardson said with a slight chuckle, "a small token of appreciation. You've been through a lot together, after all. Steve's been an asset to the company. I thought you might like something a little more personal." I felt my heart skip a beat. A car? What kind of birthday gift was that? And why me? I wasn't involved in Steve's work. I didn't understand. Why would his boss give me, his wife, a car? There had to be some sort of catch. "Mr. Richardson, this is Too much, I managed to say, still unsure of how to process what was happening. Nonsense, he replied, smiling again. You deserve it. I'll leave you two to enjoy the rest of your day. He turned and walked back to his car without another word, leaving me standing there, holding the keys in disbelief. Steve closed the door behind him, and I turned to face him. The look on his face was unreadable. Steve, what the hell is going on? I demanded, feeling the shock of the situation begin to wear off. Beth, I don't know what to say, he said, running a hand through his hair, looking frustrated. Mr. Richardson, he insisted. That's it? I couldn't believe it. You're telling me that your boss, who's been practically a stranger to me, just gives me a car and that's it? I didn't know he was going to do this. He just thought it would be a nice gesture. We've been working closely together on this project, and he wanted to show his gratitude for all the time and effort I've put in. I shook my head. This doesn't make sense, Steve. No one gives away something like that without expecting something in return. And why me, of all people? I don't know, Steve muttered, looking down at the floor. But we can't exactly turn it down, can we? Of course we can. I shouted. This doesn't feel right. This is too much, Steve. There's something more to this. What is he really trying to do? Steve didn't answer right away. Instead, he stared at the keys in my hand, a look of guilt crossing his face. It was subtle, but I noticed it. And in that moment, I realized, I had been wrong about a lot of things. The man I had trusted, my husband, was hiding something from me. The day after Mr. Richardson left the keys at our doorstep, I spent hours trying to rationalize the situation. A part of me wanted to believe Steve's explanation, that it was just a generous gesture, a way of showing appreciation for his hard work. But something didn't sit right. The more I thought about it, the more I realized how little sense it made. Mr. Richardson didn't know me, hell, we'd only met a few times at company events. He wasn't the type to give out lavish gifts, especially not to the wives of his employees. And Steve's sudden silence about the whole thing? That was the final red flag. By mid-morning, I found myself standing in front of the car. The sun was bright, and the new vehicle gleamed like it was straight off a showroom floor. I ran my fingers across the smooth surface, still unsure of what to do with it. Part of me wanted to reject the gift outright, to hand the keys back to Mr. Richardson and demand an explanation. But there was also a part of me, a small but persistent voice, that wanted to find out what this was really about. I took a deep breath and climbed into the car. The leather seats smelled fresh, and the dashboard was covered with high-end electronics. It was the kind of car most people only dreamed of owning, much less getting as a gift from their husband's boss. It was both intoxicating and nauseating. I started the engine, and the smooth purr of the car made my stomach tighten. As I pulled out of the driveway, I felt a strange sense of detachment from the world around me, as if I were driving through a dream. The streets of our quiet neighborhood looked the same, but everything felt off. I wondered how many other people had been given such a gift. Had Steve's colleagues received the same treatment? Or was it just me? That night, over dinner, Steve was quieter than usual. He didn't mention Mr. Richardson or the car, and I didn't bring it up. But the silence between us was thick. I could feel the tension between us, like a wall had been built. Steve was avoiding me, and I wasn't sure why. When the dishes were cleared and the house was quiet again, I decided to press him. Steve, we need to talk about the car, I said, my voice calm but firm. He shifted uncomfortably in his chair. Beth, we've been through this already. I told you, Mr. Richardson insisted on giving it to you. That's not an answer, I replied. Why would he do that? Why didn't you tell me about it beforehand? He looked at me, his eyes flickering with something. Fear? Guilt? I couldn't place it. He sighed heavily, rubbing his temples. I don't know, Beth. It was sudden. I didn't know how to bring it up. Well, I need you to tell me more than that, Steve. This doesn't make sense. He opened his mouth to say something but stopped short, as if weighing his words. I don't know what to say. Mr. Richardson, he's been acting differently lately. There's a lot going on with the company, and he's been putting a lot of pressure on me. This is probably just his way of, I don't know, trying to make us feel better. I didn't think it would cause such a big deal. A car, Steve? I said, my voice rising slightly. This isn't just a gesture. You don't give someone a car unless you expect something in return. Don't you see that? What is he asking for, Steve? He slammed his fist on the table, causing me to jump in surprise. I don't know, okay? I don't know. But it's not like you think. I sat back, stunned. It was the first time in years that Steve had raised his voice to me. His anger wasn't directed at me, I knew that, but it still shook me to the core. I think it's exactly like I think, I said softly. And I think you're not telling me everything. I think there's something you're hiding. Steve's face softened, but there was a look of resignation in his eyes, as if he had given up. He dropped his gaze to the table, folding his hands together in a tense knot. I'm not hiding anything, Beth. It's just complicated. You don't understand. Then explain it to me, I demanded, my voice breaking slightly. Because right now, it feels like you're the one who doesn't understand. He shook his head slowly. I can't. Not yet. I felt my stomach twist. Why not? Because it's not just about the car, Steve said quietly, almost as if he were talking to himself. It's bigger than that. What do you mean? I asked, feeling a cold rush of unease spread through my body. Steve looked up at me, his eyes filled with something I couldn't quite place. I'm in over my head, Beth. And so are you. The next day, I couldn't focus. I spent hours pacing the house, trying to figure out what Steve meant by, it's bigger than that. But there was no clarity. He wasn't talking. It was as if the whole thing had shaken him more than he was willing to admit. Later that afternoon, I decided to take matters into my own hands. I had to know what was going on, and the only way to get answers was to dig deeper into Mr. Richardson. The more I thought about him, the more I realized I didn't know him at all. I had seen him at work events, and we had exchanged pleasantries, but that was it. He wasn't a family man, not like Steve, and certainly not like anyone I would trust. I went online, searching for anything I could find on Mr. Richardson. His company, Richardson Enterprises, was a major player in the tech industry, but it wasn't the company I was interested in. I wanted to know about him, about who he was, what his motivations were. But the more I searched, the more I found myself running into walls. He was a private man, and there was little to no information about his personal life. I wasn't one to give up easily, though. I kept digging. Eventually, I found a mention of a past lawsuit, one that had been quietly settled a few years ago. The details were vague, but it seemed like it had something to do with a business deal gone wrong. That was the first crack in the armor. The days after my argument with Steve were tense. He was distant, quieter than usual, and I couldn't shake the feeling that he was hiding something from me, something huge. I had never seen him like this before. It was as though he was keeping a secret too big to confess, one that was gnawing at him and affecting everything in our lives. And it was starting to affect me too. I spent most of the next morning searching the internet, digging into any information I could find on Mr. Richardson. But the more I searched, the more I felt like I was chasing shadows. His online presence was minimal. His company, Richardson Enterprises, was famous in the tech world, but aside from a few press releases and interviews, there was nothing about his personal life, no family history, no social media accounts. Everything was carefully curated, leaving me with only one conclusion: Mr. Richardson was a man who valued privacy above all else, and that made me even more suspicious. I tried to let it go, to focus on other things. But the nagging feeling in my chest wouldn't dissipate. Something was wrong, and I couldn't shake it. That's when I received a phone call that would change everything. It was an unknown number, but something told me to pick up. I don't know why. Maybe it was the strange sense of urgency I felt, or maybe I just had a gut feeling that this call was important. "Hello?" I said, trying to mask the tremor in my voice. "Beth?" The voice on the other end was low, but unmistakably familiar. It was Rachel, a woman I hadn't spoken to in years. She and I used to be close friends, close enough that I was at her wedding, and she attended mine. We'd lost touch after I moved to Connecticut, but she had always been a friendly, open person. Still, hearing from her now felt odd. "Rachel? Is everything okay?" I asked, my mind racing. I hadn't heard from her in years, and the sound of her voice brought a wave of anxiety. Was this a social call, or was something wrong? "I'm sorry to call you out of the blue," she said quickly. "I know it's been a while, but I need to talk to you. It's about Steve." My heart skipped a beat. "Steve? What about him?" There was a long pause on the other end of the line, like she was trying to find the right words. "I don't know how to say this, but I think you need to know something," Rachel said, her voice suddenly trembling. "Steve. Steve worked for Mr. Richardson before he came to Connecticut. Back when we were living in New York, before you two moved. It's about what happened before you got together." I sat up straight in my chair, suddenly wide awake. "What are you talking about, Rachel? What do you mean, before we got together?" Rachel took a deep breath. "I'm not sure how much you know about Steve's past, but he was involved in something with Mr. Richardson. Something that went south. They were partners in a business venture, something Steve never told you about. But it ended badly, and there were rumors, Beth. Bad rumors. I thought you should know, because of what happened with the car." I felt a chill run down my spine. "What rumors? What does this have to do with the car?" Rachel was quiet for a moment, and I could hear her voice shaking through the phone. "Beth, I think Steve's working with Mr. Richardson in ways you don't know about. And I think the car wasn't just a gift. It's a message. It's something much darker than you realize." The world seemed to tilt beneath my feet. I was stunned, trying to process what Rachel had just said. Steve had worked with Mr. Richardson before? And this business venture, what did she mean? I had never heard him talk about it. I had never even heard of this connection. And how did it all tie into the car? What exactly happened between them? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Rachel hesitated. "I don't know the full details, but I know it wasn't good. There was talk about financial mismanagement, about bad deals. It got messy, and people were hurt, personally and professionally. Steve was involved, but he always downplayed it. He never really told anyone the truth. I don't know if he's ever told you." I felt like the ground beneath me was crumbling. My mind was racing as I tried to piece together the puzzle. Steve had been involved with Mr. Richardson in the past. Had they been partners? Had Steve betrayed someone, or had someone betrayed him? I thought back to the car. Rachel was right, it wasn't just a gift. Mr. Richardson wasn't a man who did anything without a reason. "Rachel, I need to think," I said, my voice faltering. "I'm going to call you back, okay?" "Beth, please, be careful," she warned. "Steve might not be the man you think he is. And Mr. Richardson. I don't trust him." The line went dead, and I sat there, the phone still pressed to my ear. My mind was spinning. I felt like I had just been thrown into a storm, and the more I thought about it, the worse it seemed. I had to confront Steve. There were too many unanswered questions now. Too many things that didn't make sense. I needed to know the truth about the car, about his past, and about what was really going on with Mr. Richardson. I spent the rest of the day pacing the house, trying to figure out how I could approach Steve without scaring him off or pushing him into more secrecy. I knew he would try to downplay everything. He always did. But I couldn't sit idly by anymore. That evening, as Steve walked through the door, I felt a strange sense of resolve wash over me. I wasn't going to let him lie to me again. Steve, We need to talk, I said before he even had a chance to sit down. He froze in his tracks, his face instantly paling. About what? About your past, I said, looking him square in the eye. About Mr. Richardson. And about that car. For the first time in years, I saw Steve look nervous. He took a deep breath, and the guilt in his eyes was unmistakable. I wasn't going to tell you this, Beth, he said quietly, but I guess it's time. The tension between Steve and me had been building all day. It wasn't just the mystery of the car anymore, it was everything. Every secret he'd been hiding, every lie that had slipped through the cracks, and every time I thought I understood him, he proved me wrong. I could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on me as I stood there, waiting for Steve to finally open up. Steve, we don't have time for games, I said, my voice shaking with a mixture of frustration and fear. I know there's more to this than you're telling me. What happened between you and Mr. Richardson? What kind of deal did you two have? Steve's face drained of color as he stood frozen, his eyes flicking nervously from side to side, as if he was looking for a way out of this conversation. But there was no escaping it now. I had the pieces, Rachel's phone call, the car, the tension between us, and I needed the whole picture. He let out a long sigh, like he'd been holding his breath for too long. I didn't want to drag you into this, Beth. I really didn't. Too late for that, I snapped, my frustration spilling out. I'm already in it. Now tell me the truth. Steve looked down at the floor, his hands wringing in his lap. I had never seen him so uncomfortable. For a moment, I thought he might refuse to speak, but then he finally lifted his head and met my gaze. Years ago, before we met, I was in business with Richardson. I didn't tell you because I didn't think it mattered. But it was a big deal. We were both young, ambitious. I was just starting out in the tech industry, and Richardson was, well, he was already at the top. We partnered up, launched a startup together. It was supposed to be our big break. I felt a cold shiver run down my spine. What happened? Why did you stop working together? He shifted uncomfortably, his voice lowering. Things went south. Bad deals. Bad investments. People lost money, lots of it. There were rumors of embezzlement, mismanagement, you name it. But the worst part was when we lost the backing of our investors. The whole thing crumbled, and, well, Mr. Richardson walked away scot-free. So you lost everything? I asked, my voice softer now, more sympathetic than before. Steve nodded slowly. Yeah. But not just that. I lost my reputation. I was accused of things I didn't do, and Richardson didn't help. He let me take the fall for the failure, for the mistakes that happened. He was ruthless, Beth. And after it was over, he made it clear that he didn't want anything to do with me. I sat down on the couch, feeling the weight of his words settle in. All this time, I had never known any of this. He had kept it all hidden from me, locked away in a part of his life I'd never been allowed to see. And now, it was all spilling out. I thought I could put it behind me, Steve continued, his voice thick with regret. But when he reached out to me again, a few years ago, to offer me a job at Richardson Enterprises, I was desperate. I needed the work, and I thought, maybe this time would be different. Maybe he had changed. I couldn't believe it. So you went back to him? I didn't have much choice, Beth. I had nothing left. No one else would hire me. I was practically blacklisted after what happened with the startup. Richardson offered me a second chance, but at a cost. He had leverage on me, everything that went wrong with the startup was still hanging over my head. He controlled my career, my future. But why the car? I asked, my voice trembling. Why give me something like that? It doesn't make sense. Steve swallowed hard, looking torn. The car wasn't just a gift. It was part of the deal. Richardson promised me that if I kept working for him, if I stayed loyal, he would give me things to keep you happy. A new house, a car, a vacation, whatever you wanted. He was trying to buy my loyalty, and by giving you that car, he thought he could keep you happy, keep you from asking questions. My head was spinning. You've been working for him all this time, under duress? It wasn't like that, Beth. It's not like I had any other choice. He knew my weaknesses. He knew I'd take the job if he dangled the right rewards in front of me. I sat back, taking in everything he had said. The pieces were starting to come together, but there was still so much I didn't understand. Why was Richardson suddenly being so generous? What did he want from Steve this time? And now, Steve said, his voice heavy with guilt, he's trying to control me again. He wants something from me, something more than just my work. I don't know what it is yet, but I can feel it. The car, Beth, it wasn't a gift. It was a message. He's trying to draw me back in, trying to pull me into whatever he's planning next. I stood up, my heart pounding. What does he want from you, Steve? What kind of deal is he trying to make? I don't know, but I'm scared. I'm scared of what he'll do if I refuse him again. He's not the same man I used to know. I think he's planning something big, something I don't want to be a part of. We stood there in silence for a long moment, both of us feeling the weight of his confession settle over us like a heavy cloud. I wanted to comfort him, tell him that everything would be okay, but I knew that wasn't the truth. Nothing was okay. We were both tangled in something much bigger than us now, and the more I thought about it, the more I realized how little control we had over the situation. Just then, my phone rang again. It was an unknown number. My heart skipped a beat as I stared at the screen. The call felt like a bad omen, a warning that things were about to spiral further out of control. Beth, Steve said softly, his hand on my shoulder, please be careful. I don't know who that is, but I don't think it's good news. I hesitated, then answered the call. Hello? The voice on the other end was cold, calculated, and all too familiar. Beth, Mr. Richardson's voice echoed through the line. I think it's time we had a more private conversation. The moment I heard Mr. Richardson's voice on the other end of the line, I felt a chill run through me. His tone was calm, but there was an unmistakable authority in it. He wasn't just calling to discuss business, he was calling to set the stage for something far more dangerous. Beth, he said, his voice smooth but tinged with something cold, I trust you're aware of the situation. But I think it's time for you to understand the full scope. It's best if we talk face to face. I felt a knot tighten in my stomach. What situation? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. What are you talking about? Let's not play games, dear. You know exactly what I'm referring to. It's time we clear the air, about the car, about Steve, about everything. We both know you're no fool. I gripped the phone tighter, my heart pounding. I wanted to refuse, hang up, and forget this whole nightmare. But there was something in his voice, a force, a power, that made it impossible to ignore. I'm not interested in playing your games, Mr. Richardson, I said, my voice sharp now. If you think you can control me with gifts and manipulation, you're wrong. There was a brief silence on the other end, and then a low chuckle. Oh, Beth, he said, amusement lacing his words, you've underestimated me. This isn't about control. This is about the truth, and I think you know you need to hear it. I felt my hands begin to tremble. What truth? He sighed, almost theatrically. Meet me tomorrow evening at the Parkview Hotel. 7 p.m. Don't keep me waiting. Before I could respond, the line went dead. I stood frozen, staring at the phone in my hand, the air in the room suddenly feeling too thick to breathe. I had no choice now. I had to go, to hear him out. But the truth was, I didn't know whether I was walking into a trap, a confrontation, or something far worse. The rest of the night was a blur. I barely ate dinner, lost in thought, trying to piece together everything that had happened in the last few days. Steve had been distant, almost withdrawn. I could feel him pulling away, but I didn't know how to get through to him. His admission earlier that day had shaken me to my core, but it also opened a door to a dark world I wasn't sure I wanted to enter. What did Mr. Richardson want from Steve, and why had he suddenly turned his attention to me? As the evening wore on, I tried to call Steve. He didn't pick up. I left a message, asking him to come home early, to talk about everything that had been going on. But I knew, deep down, that he wouldn't be any more forthcoming than he had been before. The next day, I spent hours pacing around the house, trying to prepare myself for whatever was coming. I took a long walk in the park, trying to clear my head, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being dragged into a web of lies and deceit, and I was powerless to escape it. At exactly 6:45 p.m., I found myself standing in front of the Parkview Hotel, a grand building that seemed out of place in our quiet town. It was the kind of place you only visited for something important, or something dangerous. I hesitated for a moment, wondering if I should just turn around and go home. But then I remembered Mr. Richardson's cold tone, his insistence that I show up. I couldn't back down now. I walked through the grand entrance, the plush carpet underfoot swallowing my steps. The lobby was empty except for a few scattered guests. A young woman behind the desk smiled politely as I approached. "Good evening, ma'am. How may I assist you?" she asked, her voice cheerful but distant. "I'm here to meet Mr. Richardson," I said, my throat dry. "He asked me to come." The receptionist's smile faltered slightly, but she quickly recovered. "Of course. He's expecting you. Room 312, third floor." I nodded and made my way to the elevator. My heart raced as the doors closed, and I tried to steady my breathing. I had no idea what awaited me in that room, but I knew one thing for sure: everything had changed. When the elevator doors opened, I stepped out into a dimly lit hallway. Room 312 was at the end, its door slightly ajar. I could hear voices inside, low and muffled, but I couldn't make out the words. My steps slowed, and I hesitated again. Part of me wanted to run, to turn back, but I couldn't. I had come too far. I pushed open the door and stepped inside. The room was spacious, furnished with dark wood and elegant decor. Mr. Richardson stood near the window, his back to me, looking out over the city lights. He turned when he heard the door close, his eyes cold and calculating. "Beth," he said smoothly, "I'm glad you could make it." I didn't respond, my eyes narrowing as I studied him. His demeanor was unchanged, but something in his posture seemed different tonight, more deliberate, more controlled. Like he was preparing to deliver something that would change everything. "Have a seat," he gestured to the plush armchair in front of him. "We need to talk about Steve." I crossed my arms, feeling a surge of anger. "I don't want to talk about Steve. I want you to explain yourself. Why the car? Why me?" Mr. Richardson smiled faintly. "You still don't understand, do you?" I felt a chill run through me. "Understand what?" "Everything, Beth. The car wasn't just a gift. It was an invitation, a symbol, if you will. You see, Steve and we've been in business for a long time. But the truth is, I've never trusted him completely. He's too unpredictable. But you? You're different. You're the one who can bring everything together." "What are you talking about?" I demanded, my voice rising. "I don't want anything to do with your games, Mr. Richardson." He stepped closer, his presence looming over me. "I'm offering you a chance to fix what's been broken, Beth. To turn things around. You have a role to play in this, whether you like it or not. And the sooner you accept that, the sooner you'll understand the full picture." My mind reeled. What was he talking about? Why was he bringing me into this mess? "I don't care about your games, and I certainly don't care about Steve's past mistakes," I said firmly. "I'm done with all of this." But Mr. Richardson wasn't listening. His eyes gleamed with something dark, something I couldn't quite place. "You will care, Beth," he said softly. "Because you're already involved. And the price for trying to walk away is far higher than you can imagine." I stood there, frozen, as the weight of his words sank in. I stood there in the dimly lit hotel room, my heart pounding as Mr. Richardson's words echoed in my mind. The sense of inevitability that had clung to the air grew heavier. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being backed into a corner, and it was a corner of Mr. Richardson's making. His cold eyes locked onto mine, and I felt like a pawn on a chessboard. "You think you have a choice here, Beth," he said with that same unsettling calmness, his voice smooth as silk. "But in reality, you don't." I narrowed my eyes, trying to steady my breath. "I don't want to be part of your games, Mr. Richardson. You can't force me into anything." He smirked, a cruel twist of his lips. "Oh, I'm not forcing you. You're already in it. You've been in it from the moment I handed you that car. From the moment you walked through that door." I took a step back, trying to process the weight of his words. The car, had it been some sort of trap, a means to manipulate me, to make me feel indebted or obligated? Everything felt like it had been orchestrated from the start, as if he knew exactly how I would react, how I would feel. "I don't care what you say. I'm not playing along," I snapped, trying to hold my ground, but inside, I felt a knot tightening in my stomach. He was right. I had already made the first step by coming here. It felt like I was already too deep. Mr. Richardson chuckled softly, almost pityingly. "I admire your defiance, Beth. But let me make you an offer you can't refuse." I crossed my arms tightly over my chest, my heart racing. "An offer? I don't want anything from you." He took a step forward, closing the distance between us. There was a glint of something dangerous in his eyes now, something that made my skin crawl. "The thing is, I can offer you everything you've ever wanted, and more. Financial security, a life free from worry, everything Steve promised you when he first brought you into his world." The mention of Steve sent a pang of discomfort through me. It was all too clear now, everything about this moment was tied to him, to his past, to the choices he had made. I looked up at Mr. Richardson, my voice low but steady. "And what do you want in return?" His smile deepened, but there was no warmth in it. "It's simple, really. I want you to help me control Steve. He's been a liability for too long, and it's time for someone to get him back in line. You, Beth, you have the power to do that." The room seemed to tilt, and I felt as though the walls were closing in on me. "You want me to control my husband?" The words tasted like acid on my tongue. "Not control," he said, his voice smooth like a whispered threat. "Just influence. You see, Steve has something I need. Something that could secure my position, cement my future. But he's too stubborn, too proud to see what's at stake. That's where you come in. You know him better than anyone. You can persuade him to make the right decisions. And in return, I'll make sure that you and your family are taken care of." My mind reeled. I had never felt more betrayed. To think that Steve had been involved in this kind of world, playing this kind of dangerous game, without telling me. It was like I was standing on the edge of a precipice, and the more I learned, the farther the fall seemed. "You've got to be kidding me," I whispered. "You want me to help you manipulate him?" He shrugged, his gaze unwavering. "I'm not forcing you, Beth. You can walk away. But think of what you'll lose if you do. Steve's future, your security, all of it will be tied to my success. You've seen the way things are going. The car, the house, the lifestyle, it's all part of the bargain. I'll keep Steve in line, but I need you to be the one to make sure he understands." I felt the weight of his offer like a heavy stone pressing down on my chest. My thoughts raced as I tried to make sense of the situation. The truth was, I had no idea what Steve had really been involved in with Mr. Richardson. I didn't know if I could trust him anymore. And yet, here I was, being offered everything I had ever wanted in exchange for doing exactly what Mr. Richardson asked. I swallowed hard, struggling to form words. "And what happens if I say no?" Mr. Richardson's smile faltered just slightly, but the coldness in his eyes remained. "Then everything falls apart. I'll have no use for you. And Steve will have no future." The threat hung in the air, suffocating. I stood there, the weight of his words sinking in. He had the power to destroy everything I loved, everything I had worked for. He was offering me an impossible choice, help him, or lose everything. I turned away from him, my head spinning, trying to find some clarity. The room felt too small, the walls closing in. I needed to think, to process, but it was hard to think when the future I had envisioned for myself and Steve felt like it was slipping through my fingers. You think I can just do this? That I can just turn on my husband? I asked, my voice shaking, unsure if I even believed the words I was saying. Mr. Richardson stepped closer, his presence oppressive. It's not about turning on him, Beth. It's about survival. You know what's at stake. And I'm offering you a way out. A way to make it work. Together, we can reshape your future, shape Steve's future. We can make things right. But only if you help me guide him. His words echoed in my mind, and for the first time, I felt a twinge of doubt. Was this the only way? Could I really manipulate Steve for the sake of our future? Or was I simply signing up for something that would destroy us both? I took a deep breath, standing my ground. I need time to think. Mr. Richardson's smile returned, colder than ever. Take all the time you need. But remember, time is something we don't have much of. As he turned to walk toward the door, I felt a deep sense of dread settle in my chest. I was standing at a crossroads, and no matter which path I chose, I knew my life would never be the same again. The days following my meeting with Mr. Richardson were a blur. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't eat. My mind replayed the conversation over and over again, each word he'd said, every chilling implication. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being led down a path from which there would be no return. I had made a choice, I would play along. For the sake of my family, for my own peace of mind, I had agreed to help Mr. Richardson. I would try to guide Steve, to persuade him, to make sure that he stayed on the course that Mr. Richardson wanted. But deep down, I knew this was a dangerous game. The lines between right and wrong had blurred, and I wasn't sure how much of myself I was willing to lose to survive. But the moment I walked out of that hotel room, I knew things had changed forever. Steve had no idea what I had agreed to. I hadn't told him. I couldn't. Not yet. The moment I told him the truth, he would feel the weight of the decision, the burden of knowing that I was now complicit in a dangerous scheme, and I feared it might break him. And so, I kept the secret. I put on a face of normalcy, tried to keep the peace at home, but each conversation with Steve became a tightrope walk. Every word I spoke felt like a performance, and I wasn't sure how long I could keep it up. The moment of reckoning came unexpectedly. I had just come back from the grocery store when I saw Steve pacing in the living room. His face was flushed, his hands clenched at his sides. He looked like a man on the edge of losing control. "Beth," he said, his voice tight with anger, "we need to talk." About Richardson. My heart sank. This was it. The moment I'd been dreading. I hadn't been prepared for this, but there was no running now. I set the bags down, trying to calm my nerves. What about him? Steve's eyes locked onto mine. Don't play dumb with me. I know something's going on. I know you've been meeting with him. You've been acting strange, distant, like you're hiding something from me. What's going on, Beth? I opened my mouth, but no words came. My throat was dry, the weight of the situation bearing down on me. I could lie. I could tell him that nothing was happening, that I was just helping him with some work-related issues. But I couldn't keep this up forever. He knew. And I knew that the truth would come crashing down sooner or later. I've been meeting with him, I finally said, the words slipping out in a whisper. He made me an offer, Steve. He wants me to help him with you. With your work, your future. Steve stared at me, his eyes searching mine for any hint of a lie, but there was none. What do you mean, help him with me? I felt a surge of panic in my chest. He wants me to make sure you stay on the right track. He said you've been too unpredictable, that you're not focused enough, and that he needs someone he can trust to keep you in line. He said I could help, that I could make sure you make the right decisions. Steve's face went white. His expression shifted between shock, betrayal, and confusion. "You agreed to this?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "You agreed to help him control me?" "I didn't want to," I said, my voice shaking. "But Steve, he's been threatening us." "He's been threatening you." I didn't know what else to do. "He said that if I didn't help, he'd ruin everything. You'd lose everything." There was a long silence between us, the weight of my confession hanging in the air. Steve seemed to crumble before my eyes. I had never seen him like this. His anger was palpable, but there was something else, a deep hurt, a sense of betrayal that went deeper than anything I could have imagined. "You really think that?" he finally asked, his voice hollow. "You really think I would let him destroy everything we've worked for?" "I didn't want this to happen, Steve," I said, my voice cracking. "But he's dangerous." I didn't know who else to turn to. I thought I was doing the right thing. Steve took a step back, running his hands through his hair in frustration. "You've been playing his game, Beth. All of this mess, it's his doing. And now, you've let him pull you into it. You've let him manipulate you." I recoiled, the hurt in his words cutting deeper than I had anticipated. "I didn't want to." "No, you didn't want to. But you did. You chose to walk into his trap. And now you're asking me to help you clean up your mess?" His words stung, but I didn't know how to defend myself. I had made a choice, a terrible, misguided choice, and now it was all unraveling in front of me. I had thought I could control the situation, that I could protect Steve and keep him safe from the web Mr. Richardson had spun, but I had underestimated the power of the man who had set this entire plan in motion. "Steve," my voice cracked as I reached out for him, but he took another step back, his eyes filled with anger and pain. "No. Don't come near me. You've been lying to me this whole time. You've been lying to both of us." The silence between us was deafening, and for the first time, I felt completely alone. I had tried to do what I thought was right, but in the end, I had betrayed the person I loved the most. Steve turned away, heading for the door. "I need to think," he said, his voice cold. "Don't follow me." And just like that, he was gone. I stood there in the empty room, my heart racing. The weight of the past few days pressed down on me like a ton of bricks. Everything I had feared was coming true, and now, I was alone with the consequences of my actions. What had I done? The days following Steve's departure were a blur of tension and self-reflection. I couldn't stop thinking about everything that had gone wrong, how I had allowed myself to be manipulated, how I had chosen to protect him in a way that had torn our lives apart. Every action I had taken, every lie I had told, seemed to have only driven us further apart. Steve didn't come home that night. He didn't come home the next night either. I tried calling him, but he didn't answer. I left messages, desperate for a chance to explain myself, but nothing seemed to break through. I knew I had to give him space, but each passing hour felt like a lifetime. I was suffocating in my guilt and regret, knowing that no matter what I did now, I had crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. Then, one morning, just as I was about to lose all hope, the doorbell rang. I opened the door cautiously, unsure of who I would find on the other side. When I saw Steve standing there, I couldn't contain the flood of emotions that came rushing forward. His face was a mixture of exhaustion and resolve, and for the first time in days, I felt a sliver of relief. But the look in his eyes told me that things were far from okay. "Steve," my voice faltered, and I stepped forward, unsure if I should touch him. "I'm so sorry. I never meant for any of this to happen." He didn't respond immediately. Instead, he stood there, silent, his hands in his pockets, looking at me with a mixture of disbelief and something darker. I could feel the weight of everything we had been through, the lies, the betrayal, the silent distance that had grown between us. He had been hurt in ways I hadn't even fully understood until now. "I don't know if I can forgive you, Beth," he said finally, his voice quiet but firm. "What you did, what you agreed to, it's not something I can just forget. You chose to betray my trust, and it cut deeper than you know." His words stung, but they were the truth. I had betrayed him, and there was no easy way to undo that. All I could do was stand there, accepting the weight of my actions. I never wanted to hurt you, I whispered, my voice breaking. But I didn't know what else to do. I was scared. I didn't want to lose everything, Steve. I didn't want us to lose everything. He didn't look at me, but I could see his jaw tightening as he fought to keep his composure. You should have trusted me, Beth. We've been through everything together, and this? This was the one thing that could have destroyed us. I don't know if I can ever look at you the same way again. I felt my heart shatter. I had done this. I had broken the one thing that had been holding us together, our trust. And no apology could fix it. But then, Steve sighed, the sound heavy with emotion. But I'm not walking away, Beth. I'm not. I don't know how we're going to fix this, but I'm willing to try. Tears welled up in my eyes, and I stepped toward him, reaching out to touch his arm. You mean it? You're willing to try? He nodded, but it wasn't a promise. It was more like a challenge, an acknowledgement that we had both broken something that couldn't be easily repaired. We've got a long way to go, Beth. I need to know I can trust you again. I need to know that you won't let him pull you back in, that you'll never let anyone come between us again. I won't, I said, my voice steady. I'll do whatever it takes to make things right. I'll spend the rest of my life trying to rebuild what I broke. He met my eyes for the first time in days, and I could see the exhaustion in his face, the toll this had taken on him, on both of us. But there was also something else. Hope. It wasn't much, but it was there. A spark of something that told me maybe, just maybe, we could make it through this. I'll hold you to that, he said softly. But we'll take it one day at a time. And so we did. It wasn't easy. The path to healing was slow, filled with hard conversations and difficult decisions. Trust, once broken, didn't come back easily. But we took small steps forward, learning to communicate, to rebuild, and to forgive. As for Mr. Richardson, he faded from our lives as quickly as he had entered it. I never saw him again, nor did I want to. I knew now that he had been using both of us as pawns in a game he was playing for power, and when I realized how easily I had been manipulated, the anger and betrayal I felt toward him was almost palpable. But I also knew that he would never have had the leverage over us if we hadn't allowed it in the first place. In the end, I realized something important: betrayal doesn't always come from the outside. Sometimes, it comes from within, from the choices we make, the paths we take, and the people we allow into our lives. But no matter how far we fall, we always have the power to rise again, to rebuild what was broken, and to find redemption. The most important thing I learned, however, was that the price of trust isn't just the forgiveness of others. It's the ability to forgive yourself. And in time, that's what I did. Epilogue. It's been months since that night at the Parkview Hotel. Steve and I are still rebuilding, but things are better now. We've taken things slow, step by step. I still think about what happened, how I got caught in the web of someone else's game, but I don't regret the lessons I've learned. I don't regret the choices that brought me here. And though the scars will always be there, I know we've both come out stronger on the other side. As for Mr. Richardson, I heard through the grapevine that his empire eventually crumbled. It wasn't me who brought him down, it was his own arrogance, his own need for control, that led to his downfall. Karma, I suppose, has a way of finding people, no matter how high they think they're flying. But as for me, I've learned that sometimes the most painful journeys lead to the greatest growth. And if I can find peace with myself, I know I can find peace with Steve, too. Together, we're healing. One day at a time.